So just take some time to talk about some miscellaneous things having to do with language and cultural barriers, especially when it comes to the mosque. You know, um, as converts, you've known a lot of people who don't like Islam in our life. I mean, and their fears are legitimate. I mean, they've grown up on decades and decades of propaganda. They see the behavior of some Muslims that's um, pretty unacceptable. Does it justify it? That's not what we're here to answer. I mean, us as European converts are um, really in the fire because there's the combined Islamophobia due to things that we see in terms of terrorism and violence and cultural practices, and on top of that, the idea that we're being called race traders. It's essential that we need to organize in some sort of fashion. I mean, I remember a good brother of mine telling me that we need you guys to stay in the West. And it's not to discredit the brothers that have gone overseas to do their ijaza at Medina or Mecca or Al Azhar, and that's true. I mean, we need to be here. We serve an important role, and we can't give up on our family and our community. Having said that, it's almost impossible to do that as a one-man army. I mean, you look at Nuh alayhi salam. He spent hundreds of years, talking about Islam to his own people, and they rejected him time after time after time. And he was he was one person. Now he was a prophet. Us, we don't have these type of resources. So, two people are better than one. Having an organization, would give us more strength to be able to do that. And you can even take it a step further and to say that at least a proportion of European descendant converts should be looking into the possibility of starting a family and marrying someone of the same background. And that way you can grow, the Muslim community from the ground up, and that way both families feel more comfortable talking to one another, and you can go from there. Just the idea of, some of these people who hate Islam, of them even stepping foot in a mosque, there's just so many cultural barriers. I just don't know where to begin. I mean, first of all, hearing the adhan, it just creates this visceral reaction where their blood pressure shoots up 50 points. I mean, the first time a Muslim hears the adhan is when they're born. First time a non-Muslim hears the adhan is the opening scene of The Exorcist. You know, um, Also complete gender separation. I mean, they're totally not cool with that. They look at that and they see oppression. You know, why are women in the back? Why are they, all wrapped up? Like that's all they can see. You know, um, and some mosques will not allow women into the mosque without a hijab. Is there Islamic validity to that? Allah knows best. Like I said, I'm not a scholar, but it does create a huge barrier because you're basically shutting out half the population that might come in. I remember one time during the Friday prayer before the sermon, and there was a Catholic school next to our mosque, and the mosque in the basement, they would cook like falafel and like meat pies and stuff beforehand. So a lot of the Catholic kids would come in and buy food and then come out. There's one uncle in the lobby who took it upon himself that when a Catholic girl came in and she wasn't dressed appropriately with two other Muslim sisters to go get something to eat, this brother went nuts and physically kicked this teenage girl out of the masjid. And of course she's going to tell her friends and her family, and then word's going to get around, and then it's going to get worse and worse. So that can happen. I mean, it's not to say that a lot of experiences Muslims have or non-Muslims have when they come to the mosque the first time is overwhelmingly positive, and I don't want to sound like too negative when it comes to that. And the mosque does put a lot of effort into these things, but just the idea of the open house itself, it creates so many of these barriers because only the very brave and people who have a very positive image of Islam are going to come to an open house to begin with. So it's a real attrition bias. So the people you're trying to meet, or you're trying to, sort of allay their fears, or either have a neutral image of Islam or a very negative. So they're not going to come to a mosque. Even those who have a positive image of Islam, like some of my family members, they still wouldn't feel reluctant because it's a totally different culture. Other things too. I mean, like it's a totally different culture experience, and again, that's what they're expecting a lot of times. So that's why a lot of them don't go there. But this gets into another discussion about what this type of Islam for Europeans brick and mortar place would look like. I mean, obviously, we don't want to have anything in it that violates Islamic ethics. With to try to keep gender separation as respectable as possible. I remember one time at an open house, in the lobby, there were two brothers to shake the men's hands and to introduce them to the mosque, and me and the other first gens, we brought this up to the Islamic leadership that there should be another table next to that with two sisters. And they couldn't understand why. It was like they're trying to, doing these things in front of Musa, where Musa's like, "What the heck are you doing? Why did he scuttle the boat? Why did he, build up this wall?" Because we told them that to not get a handshake in any type of situation in the West is seen as extremely disrespectful, and even more disrespectful when one gender is getting it but not the other. So at least when non-Muslim people came in, the women can shake the sisters' hands and the men can shake the brothers' hands. So at least they get a handshake. So that was our creative way of trying to get around that. So you have to use creativity in some of these situations. You have to think outside the box, and a lot of the Islamic leadership had a lot of problems accepting that. Will these mosques eventually change? Again, I'm not very optimistic. I mean, we're in 2020. We still have mosques that still deliver the khutbah in Urdu and Arabic. And that's still a minority, and you see them more in the inner cities. But still, even if the English is really good, again, the people we're trying to reach, that we're trying to change, which is our duty, we're not really reaching that in any regard. So, so it's an interesting topic, and again, it's a sensitive one because, like I said, relearning French as an adult, you really understand how difficult it is to learn a new language. And I don't want to denigrate these brothers who are trying to learn English, especially ones in Islamic leadership roles. So, it takes time. It does take time. And we need to work together, and I never advocated for separation here at Islam for Europeans. The Islamic leaders, they have way more knowledge than I do, but I know the culture of the people. I know what's going to work and what's not going to work. So we definitely need to work together. We definitely need to have our own spaces. And in that way, I never wanted to, ask Muslims' cultural background to change, because, that would be unacceptable on my part, provided that, Muslims from European background work on creating their own sub-community to be with, as an integrated way of having our own struggles and work through our own things, and also belong to the greater Muslim community at large. And on a final note, again, why have a European Muslim sub-community at all? Why not just make it about converts? And I could see that's a good question. It really is. When it comes to Canada, converts are so dispersed and spread out to begin with that it's even just difficult to get a convert group going. But in the United States, there's a large history of racial tension, which can be very easily seen. And a lot of our family members are not going to feel comfortable even going into an African American masjid. It's just a fact. I mean, we do have a lot of cultural things in common with our African American brothers, but at the same time, I think, if we want to be able to deliver this message effectively, either in delivering the message of Islam or getting them to the point where they don't hate it as much anymore, this is an endeavor that we need to take on. So that's it for today. Just let me know what you think in the comment section on cultural and language barriers. Thank you very much for listening. My name is Robert from Islam for Europeans. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And have an Eid Mubarak. Take care.